Welcome back. Now, we are into the penultimate round of this year's Six Nations Championship. A photo finish appears to be on card with little daylight separating the top four sides. There is little really to choose between Wales, England, France and Ireland.
Yes. And for me, I think England still tipping it, young team, but quite determined, very structured.
Yeah.
Wales have some returning backs in there, Jonathan Davis.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the game will be won, in the back line, because the forwards seem pretty well matched.
Yeah.
The fullback, Mike Brown versus Halfpenny.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'd give it to England. England to edge it, they're at home. Ireland, Italy, that one definitely Ireland is, I think for me, are coming out to winners in this one.
Yeah.
France, Scotland, France in Scotland, France with their problems. Pickham all being sent home, the coach reading the riot act, players wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
Typical French collapsing, but again, from their collapse, they got to the final of the World Cup. So
and Wales, just sticking with the big game, you know, it's the biggest grudge fixture on the rugby calendar. That's Wales taking on England. We know that they are in the same group, World Cup group, and winning this will psychologically, you know, boost whichever side comes out top. And the Welsh coach Warren Gatland talked of going for a win here just to get, you know, that tonic. Do you see them neutralizing the English scrum, that the driving scrum that is of England?
Yes, if you saw Wales play against France, really, the forwards were doing their work, and I think against England, they know what is at stake here. I mean, of the four teams tied at 4 points each, it's one of these two that is bound to lose out. And like you said, they're in the same group at the World Cup. So there's a lot to prove here. But going by the last game against France, I think the Wales forwards have what it takes to stop the England pack.
We've got Jerry Bally coming up very shortly. But before that, we'll get into your Twitter responses, which of course you've been sending through using the hashtag Ruck and Roll. If I may sample something here, I'll start with something that Gladys sent us. It's from last weekend's aborted playoff match between Impis and Mongas. And she writes, and I quote, "They got scared. Impis was ready for these Mongas." Of course, she's alluding to that playoff match, which we have confirmed takes place today at the graveyard.
Yes. I think it was a case of denial, a bit of denial on the Mongas side. And the fact that I think it's upsetting that you have to play to stay in top six.
Yeah.
Imp is of course very eager. They can't wait to come back. So Gladys has a point in terms of just the disruption it causes. Are we going? Are we not going?
Yeah.
And I suppose that's been a characteristic of our rugby that we'd like to see somehow put it in our past so that it's structured, everything is clear.
Yeah.
But it's all part of it. I think as we are growing, it's called teething problems.
Yeah.
I think as a teenager, you have some of these.
Some of those problems.
Yes.
Of course, it's a very bitter pill for the Mongas to swallow. But do you see Impis pulling off a shocker? This would be a shocker for all accounts. And
I want to be kind to Impis, much as Mongas is a good team.
Yeah.
When you look at players like Augustine Kaliesubula, Keith Seriange, they're already featuring on National Sevens team. You have Raymond Kasule there, the flanker, a former Smack boy. They've been playing good rugby. But of course, it's going to be tough against Mongas when you're facing a man like Olwenyi and the form he's on. But Impis have a chance, especially the fact that they're playing at home.
Can they be consistent on the day? And I think that's what the top six requires. Consistency. Because where the Mongas find themselves now is their own mistake. They had everything within their hands to do.
yeah.
And on the last day went and capitulated against the Mongas.
Yeah.
And also lost another game somewhere in between, which they shouldn't have lost. So it's that consistency.
Okay. And finally here, Ronald cannot wait for the Uganda Super Series to start. But there have been a few changes there, haven't they?
Yeah. There have been a few changes. I think it's starting on 21st March.
Yeah.
Of course, it was mostly to do with sponsorship. The union was in negotiations with a few sponsors. They needed time to get a few things in order. But it's scheduled to kick off on 21st March, and it's going to be an interesting one there.
Okay. Now, for the first time on this show, we're off to the gym, because that's where the game is either won or lost. But what are the do's and the don'ts while in the gym? Well, we've gotten Jerry Bally and Heathen's fullback, Benon Kiza, to fill us in.
There is no one thing that defines conditioning. It's a holistic process where every aspect of the body, internally and externally, diet, gym work, road work, and even mental conditioning, all have to come into play to produce the ideal rugby player. There's a difference between gym fitness and match fitness. Match fitness is where all the knocks actually harden the body off. They toughen the bones, they make your muscles ready to receive the very, very high impacts that you get in a full contact game of rugby. And that is just a case of going out there, I'm afraid, and putting your body on the line. And to get the best out of somebody, they've got to actually be sweating before they play rugby. So your warm-up should bring the sweat running down your face. The stretch off prevents muscle injuries because they're cold. Muscles, when they're warm, are much more flexible, like a piece of plastic. When you put it in hot water, it starts to move and become more flexible. So you're less likely to have stiffness and you're less likely to have injuries if you warm up and warm down. You cannot become an all-round rugby player on day one, and the build-up has to be very gentle, otherwise you'll end up hurting yourself or just disappointing yourself and giving up. Fitness starts at a low intensity, low level, and over a period of weeks and months is built up until we get what we hope is the finished rugby article. It doesn't have to be particularly heavy weights that you're using, but if you overdo it or do it badly, equally you're going to hurt yourself. Repetitions of an incorrect exercise can be very damaging. And then finally, of course, you can injure muscles and tendons and joints by lifting too much weight. And every man thinks he's stronger than he is, and you get in the gym and you think, I'm going to be a bit macho here, the girls are watching me or whatever, I want to impress my friends, and twang, you pull the muscle, and it can take months for that to recover. Yeah. Well, we have one very unpleasant little exercise that's called the bleep test, and the gentleman behind me on the exercise bike will know all about that. It's testing what's known as your VO max, your oxygen levels in your body. And it sounds very simple, it involves running 20-metre shuttle runs between two parallel white lines over a pre-described period. And you run at one speed for a minute, the speed is then turned up a little bit, you run for another minute, and it just gets gradually faster and faster between the two parallel lines, and people then start to fall off. We call it falling off. They just can't run anymore, so they stop. And we've got up to, I think, Kenapito, bless him, I think we got him up to level 16, where the maximum is 21. So I mean, that doesn't sound very good, but trust me, level 16 on the bleep test, you are exceptionally fit. Most people fall off at 9 or 10, very fit, 12, 13, 16 was exceptional. The most important part of the warm down is the stiffness that you will get the next day. And stiffness in muscles relates to retained uric acid. It's a chemical very similar to in human urine, but it crystallizes in muscles. You get little tiny specks of uric acid in your muscles, and that's that horrible stiff feeling that you feel the next day when you get out of bed after violent exercise and everything seems to ache and not work properly. If you warm down, you help dissolve those crystals and reduce the recovery period because you won't have that stiffness the following morning.
David, when Kenya took us to the cleaners in last year's CAR semi-final, the CAR Cup semi-final, conditioning did play a telling role in this, didn't it?
I think that's the point. It's almost when they call it an aha moment. The light bulbs went on that we are way out of our depth.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, it was almost a 3 or 4 week period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Week 1, Uganda, Kenya, we win in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Week 2, injuries,
Yeah.
we lose by 3 points in Kampala.
Yeah.
Week 4, Madagascar, we lose by 40 odd points.
There's a yawning gap. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the ability to, the staying power, what they call stamina and staying power, to be able to play week in, week out at the top level, I think is critical. And that was something that everyone recognized.
Yeah.
And I think after that, we had the South African coach come to upskill some of our coaches to say, how do we get that skill within our coaches so that our players are getting the best tips, being in the best condition actually to play this game.
Yeah, and Philip, we heard from the union president last week, Andrew War. He was talking about conditioning and him using the Super Series, as some kind of platform, to build capacity in this realm of conditioning. Do you see the union making any headway?
I think it will make headway. Of course, part of conditioning is match fitness in itself. And when he brings in the Super Series, we saw the interview where the Monga's coach, is it John?
Yeah.
Complained about what happens when the season ends for those not playing Bamburi.
Yeah.
And this is one of the answers to that question. The players get to play this Ugandan Super Series and then head into the Bamburi.
Yeah.
So you have that constant match fitness.
Yeah.
And of course, that will keep them as well in the gym to work on their body strength.
Yeah. And all the franchise teams in the Super Series, that's 4 of them, they will have a conditioning coach. He says he envisages the clubs later also, this bug biting the clubs. Do you see this happening?
Yeah, I think it's a good start, at least structurally. If you look at the requirements for each Super Series club, all those are laid out. As to whether we'll have different individuals for that, so you might find a coach who has 5 facets. He's the conditioning coach, he's the skills coach, and he's ex-coach. So, but what it does is raise the level. So, for example, you'll have Mongas pairing with some teams from the Chadondo sides.
Yeah.
You'll have the Warriors pairing with the Cobs. Yeah. So all the players raise their quality of play because you're no longer playing at the league level. And that allows you more competition. It allows you a greater edge. So you're testing your body at a different level with players almost who are either above you or who you are really your peers. So the competition grows, and that allows for that to happen in that series. But as to whether we can go into, as you said, it's still in season. Yeah. So how do you recover, which is another part of conditioning. Recovery is quite important. And then balance that with going to the gym and staying in good condition.
Okay. And Jerry Barry, he pointed this out, that the conditioning is different for a prop, and it does not condition the same way a fullback will condition. This should be taken into consideration. Definitely.
It depends on what the player wants to do.
Yeah.
So if you want to be an explosive player, for example, you don't want to be carrying the heaviest weights. It's short, sharp kind of workouts. The props will want to carry the heaviest equipment in the gym. They will even probably want to carry the building if you allow them. But for the backs, it's more around how do I react faster, how do I respond, how do I recover faster. So it's all, I think, a part of it.
That's why it's very important that these clubs have someone who is grounded in this knowledge of conditioning. The one size fit all that David was talking about, it doesn't work nowadays, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't. And it's true, all these clubs should have it, because you see, this problem comes from the club to the national team. I mean, why should national team be focusing a lot on conditioning? It should be getting players that are well conditioned and are going to do the light work and work on the tactics and all. So in a way, it's really very, very vital that clubs get conditioning as key.
But what I'd like to add to that, probably is very critically important, is that the clubs don't have the players that much of the time. So it takes personal initiative, and as you saw Benon working out on his own. So the coach needs to give the player a program that allows him to work at his own pace, but with certain targets where the coach has, so the coach tests the player in terms of his conditioning and his expectations. And whether he passes or fails, then he gives him a new routine that allows him to get there.
Okay, we'll have to leave it at that. That's it from us today. Thank you for watching. For myself and the crew, it's good day and goodbye.